Hey, how's it going, y'all? Welcome back to the Gil Podcast. This podcast is about me, Gil, and the things that I'm currently obsessed with. On today's podcast, I want to talk about breaking rules or breaking the rules as a creator, paving your own path, not listening to other people's suggestions, upgrading equipment, when to upgrade, and of course, altogether you can tell it's all about being your own person. Hope you are all doing well. I haven't done a legit video for my YouTube channel since I hit 1,000 subscribers. I think I did a live stream, but life has been lifing, and it's been really difficult it hasn't been difficult to come up with ideas. It has just been difficult to carve out time for my own channel. And I told my wife this year. I said, well, I'm going to slow down on the client work or ultimately stop doing client work. And I think I've said this on this podcast too. And that just hasn't happened. It's like I'm basically taking an immediate reward from my clients or from jobs or people, like getting that immediate satisfaction, which is monetary value. And I'm foregoing something that could potentially be in the future, like focusing on my YouTube channel and letting that grow, writing my third book and focusing on that. I have a bunch of projects. I think I said this in the Patreon, where I'm working on some extracurricular activities to bring people together. Like I'll be able to focus on that, and I can give all of that my time and energy. But instead, I'm kind of like dividing. I'm like, hey, putting time here, putting time there. But yeah, that's not what this episode is about. Maybe we can talk about that in another episode, maybe next week's episode. But I still want to feed the masses. I still want to share my ideas. And this idea came across to me while I was watching a Becky and Chris video. Becky and Chris, they have been so instrumental in my creator journey. Everybody has someone that they look up to, and Becky and Chris, yeah, my wife already knows, like my wife loves watching their camping adventures, helicopter adventures, their story, their home ownership story. Like they have been extremely instrumental. And Becky got a truck maybe 2 years ago, and it's a Ford, I think it's a F-150. And Becky, since she's a social media person, she's pretty popular, has gotten a lot of DMs from people telling her, you should upgrade this, you should change this, you should do that. And it's really cool. Like you could tell there's a lot of excitement, but there's a lot of you need to buy this, you need to get that, you need to upgrade and change that. And as I was listening to her talk about this on the video, I can't help but feel that same pressure. I remember when I got this home, me and my wife purchased this home, a lot of people were telling me what I should do to it as far as like home upgrades. And me as a creator, I didn't really know what I really wanted to focus on. I tried photography in here. The room is kind of too tight for photography. Headshots, it works really well. But I did take the opportunity to at least try to take portraits, like, whole body shots. And it doesn't really give you that type of look. But I still had people telling me, you got to do photography in here. You got to do photography in here. But it was more so like, because they wanted me to do it for them, that type of thing. And it wasn't necessarily for me. And it was just like an idea that they wanted to see realized for them so they can see it, but not for me. And I tried photography in here. It didn't really work out. I bought backdrops. I bolted, I have a cement wall. So these walls are cement, except the one that I'm facing and except the ones like, I don't know. There's like some of the main walls. Even the ceiling, they're concrete, not cement, Gil. They're concrete, so they're really tough. So I had to bolt this freaking backdrop holder on there, and it's not coming off. Like this, like to take it off, it'll be so messy. It's aggravating, but I left it up there because that was a point in time where I was in my creator journey and I didn't know what I really wanted to do. So now I decided to start doing podcasts. And I said this before on this podcast. I had so many people telling me, you got to do this, paint it this color. I had a friend tell me she wants me to paint the whole entire room black. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, just paint it black. Becky and Chris have their studios like, it's like a matte black look. And it'll work. It works for them, but I'm already black, you, and it's like the room will have no light at all. The light won't be bouncing anywhere. And I know there's a lot of the black creators who have dark rooms. That's just not me. That, it's a thing. Like a lot of creators that I see, they have this dark aesthetic. It's very like dark and neon light and stuff. Nah, I like having lights. I like when you turn my video on, you have to like, whoa, what's this? What's going on in there? Oh, wow, that's great. I don't want it to be dark and mysterious. Like that's not my cup of tea. But then I had tons of people telling me that. I had one of my friends, she told me, one of a couple of my guy friends, a couple of my models, paint this black, do this, you should do this. Because that's what everybody else is apparently doing. Even Becky and Chris, but I decided not to, even though I love them so much. And because I didn't listen to everybody and I didn't follow what everybody else was doing, I had a whole entirely different setup compared to everybody else. I didn't have a dark wall. I didn't have egg foam on the wall. I had something pleasant that people in the corporate space can use. I have something pleasant that a lot of models, women, mothers feel safe and feel comfortable, feel like their brand could be presented well. I have high earning clients who come in here regularly because my space looks professional and clean versus dark and ominous and mysterious. Like, no, I'm not following anybody else but me. This space was completely designed, and it's not me being selfish, but it's just one of those things where, oh wow, somebody actually appreciated something that I came up with, so much so that they're driving from, super far, 30, 40 miles away, just to come in here and do something to share information with their followers or potential followers or share information with the world. That means something. I kind of know what I'm doing, That's something that I always think about too, where it's like, oh yeah, remember that time that everybody was telling you to go here and you went here, and because you went your own path, people started gravitating towards you, and the people who were telling you to go down a different path just disappeared, and they've never created content. And it's not like a hating thing, but it's just, I remember vividly so many of those people telling me what I should be doing in my space, but have never done anything in their space for people. It's just one of those funny things. So I'm giving a testimony. Pave your own path. If you have the idea in your head, do it. Yes, you can get suggestions. Yes, you could get counsel from people who might know what they're talking about, but there's nobody who knows more than you. You know you best. And the thing that ends up happening is I come up with ideas for myself, how I want my own studio YouTube channel, my podcast to look and sound, where other people can't really relate to that. And then what ends up happening is the space ends up becoming that's something that's artificial. Everything in this room I use. The blue chairs, I'm actually sitting down on these blue chairs now because they're super comfortable. I like these blue chairs. My workbench, I use my workbench. It's not some piece of aesthetic where it just looks a certain way, even though I made sure I had to get a blue one, right? Because blue's my favorite color. I just recently got a Nordic leather mouse pad because I was scuffing up the desk and I needed a mouse pad because I didn't want to have my mouse. I use a MX Master 3 mouse, and I hated having it drag on the wood on my table. So I got the things that I need because I'm going to use them. There's even times where a lot of creators will tell me, you need to buy this lens. I'm like, all right, well, I don't think I need that lens. Oh, you gotta get it. You gotta get this lens. I don't think I need it. I've been producing, I don't even know how to count it, hundreds of people's podcasts. And I'm not using a Sony lens or a name brand lens. I'm using some cheap knockoff Chinese lens, a Samyang 50 millimeter 1.4 aperture. And to be honest with you, one of the lenses freaks out every once in a while with the autofocus. So I have to use it manually. I have to manually focus this lens. And I've been doing this for over a year, maybe 2 years now. That has not stopped me from creating. It has not stopped me from getting my clients to look that they want. It's just I have to manually focus it. The client stays put and we're ready to go. But I'd have so many people tell me you have to change this, you have to upgrade this, it has to be this name brand particular thing. And what ends up happening, like I said before, I would end up doing something for them to have their own dream realized because they can't do it for themselves. You know, that makes sense. Basically, it's like they want me to do this thing. They want to live vicariously through me. So they'll try to direct my path. I'm like, nah, I'm good. You know, like for me, like technology improves like every single day, but that doesn't mean that you have to purchase it. Like I'm using a Sony A7C for the close-up shots for my clients, and the main wide shot is a Sony A7 IV. Great camera. I think most people in this space are currently using the Sony FX3 or the FX30 or the Sony A7S III, which I totally want. I mean, want. Do I need? No. I'd even be honest with you a step further. A lot of my clients would tell me, hey, can you record the video? And I would waste time with the SD card and record in 4K, do all these other things and give them like individual videos. Like, I don't need this. I, I just, I just want the part where I talk about this particular thing. And like, well, I have this whole 4K video. I could chop it down for you, give you this huge file. I'm like, no, I don't need that. So then I basically stopped recording on my SD card because I used to record on the SD card with my A10 Mini Extreme ISO, which gives me 4 or 3 individual camera feeds depending on how many cameras I have connected to it. So if I have one camera, I'll get one video file of my camera feed plus the SD card. And then I'll also record on a program called Ecamm Live. So if you're doing the math, that's 3 sources of video for the same video. So same one camera angle, I can get 3 videos just in case, you know, something were to happen with the SD card, with the ATEM. There's backups on backups. And after a project, after I give them the video file, I then delete it. But what ended up happening was clients would say that they don't necessarily care for the quality. They just want the video. And I'll even go a step further and tell you that a lot of the clients don't even care for super crispy audio quality. They just want their thoughts and ideas on the internet. But a lot of my friends who do not create for clients, a lot of my friends who don't have equipment, a lot of my friends who have never recorded a podcast will tell me, hey, or not even people, friends, just people on the internet. Like I've had to block a lot of people on YouTube because I would share like a behind the scene thing and a lot of people tell me, hey, you should do this. Hey, why aren't you doing this? Like it's so crazy if you're like not on the front lines. And I don't want to say front lines as if this is a battle or anything, but if you're not there, it's kind of hard to, if you're not in this space, it's kind of hard to tell people what to do, what they should be doing. Like I recently had a podcast outdoors like a couple of months ago, and I had so many people asking me like, why are you doing this outdoors? Why is it, this doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing that? Oh, those microphones aren't meant for that. It's like, okay, block. It wasn't them telling me the microphone is not meant for that. It was more so them telling me that what I'm doing is wrong. My client wanted to do a particular thing, and it just so happened to be the city of Miami Gardens. Well, I'm sorry, I don't have these microphones that could work for you. Hey, this isn't a conducive environment to podcasts. If it were technically impossible, I wouldn't do it. But hey, you can record audio. You can just remove the background noise. The audio might sound a little funny because you have music blaring in the background, but you can get it done. And that has always been my take. I recently went to Atlanta and I did a podcast in a loft, like a massive empty warehouse loft. It's like this, a lot of other podcasters produce their shows there, and their audio isn't always the best. Like, it's like, okay, this is fine. The Cocktails podcast, a podcast that I personally have been listening to for years. They produce their podcast there. Ash Cash, he produces his podcast there as well in Atlanta. And I remember reading some of the comments. Me as a podcast producer, engineer person, I could tell when there's bad audio. Does it stop me from listening to it? To a piece of equipment, a piece of work? No. Whatever, it all depends on the material, the subject matter. If I'm really, really interested in it, then I will listen. But I have so many people in my comments sometimes on YouTube. They'll tell me, "Hey, this is wrong." Like the outdoor podcast, I mean the loft. There's so much echo in here. Like how are you going to produce this? How are you going to? I'm like, well, obviously you've never heard of Auphonic. Obviously you've never heard of Podcast.Adobe. There's so many different AI tools that can remove echo. Like, it's been a thing for years. I remember there was one time I did a podcast I was inside of a studio space, and it was a couple, it was a husband and wife couple. And I had laid, this is a true story, like super true, not making this up. I laid my headphones on my Rodecaster Pro, and I guess I pressed the robotic button. So the video was the audio was robotic. And at the time I was showing this guy how I produce podcasts. So he was shadowing me. So he put on the headphone. He freaked out. "Oh my gosh, they sound robotic." And I'm like, chill. It's okay. Like, I'm with the Rodecaster Pro, I have it set to where you can actually have the original audio file, original audio, and the edited, and relax. Even if it's robotic, you can still fix it in post, and it's not the end of the world. Like, a lot of people who don't do this work, or even some clients, they would act like this is it. Like, you have to get this right. Not really. It's not the end of the world. Like, there are times where I do a podcast and it might be out of focus, maybe a smidge. And I remember it used to kill me. But I tell the client, hey, they don't even notice. They're just so enthralled in how it sounds. Like, them being out of focus for like a few seconds doesn't really matter. Like, it's not even a thing. And this is reason why I tell people, just start creating, be your own person. You have a unique perspective. Creativity literally is just about you expressing yourself and, embracing who you are, and like letting your light or your thoughts come out, like shining. But when you end up allowing other people to pretty much muddy, or you end up like doing things to please other people, you're not shining. You're basically just, you're dim. And I'm not saying not to listen to people, but use discretion. I have a few people who I definitely listen to, and it's not even the listening to as you might think. They're not telling me, "Hey, do this, try this. Hey, have you ever thought of doing this?" Is Some people, they do that, but a lot of people that I end up listening to are creators who create, who have their thoughts and ideas on the internet consistently, and I'd see how they move. I see how they correspond to people on social media. I see how they market their videos or projects. They're speaking, not to me, but they're speaking to the creator who were in their shoes a couple of years ago, who was just starting out, who was lost. And a lot of people don't take the time to even listen to that. They're just more so paying attention to what people are shouting and spewing in the comments. I can't tell you how much stupid comments I get, like hateful comments on my YouTube channel, where it's just people would say the darnest things. And it's like, okay, great. And I would respond, but then I notice, oh yeah, when you feed the trolls, you lose. You don't win that battle. So what I ultimately do now, I just block them or ignore them. And It's really tough. I didn't want this podcast to be super negative, but I just wanted to just talk about not listening to people and just listening to yourself. Like, you know what you really want. But then again, there are people who really don't know what they want. I have a lot of clients who don't know what they want. I just did a podcast with 6 people. It was so weird. So initially, I thought it was just going to be 1 or 2 people. So I brought just 2 mics, 2 short SM7Bs. I believe I have 6. Yeah, I do have 6 short SM7Bs, but to carry them, it's kind of just unnecessary. And also, I'd have to like bring multiple XLR cables. It'll just be a complete mess. Can I do it? Yes, definitely. I just have to have 4 XLRs, and I have like 2 splitters, 2 Y cables. So next time I'll be ready for that. But at the same time, it's just so unnecessary. And I did tell them that. I was like, hey, this is so unconventional, and this is not this is not the best conducive environment for a podcast. Not at all. I literally told them that 3 times. I said, this is the worst case scenario. That's what I first said. Then I said, all y'all need to be on the podcast. And then afterwards, they asked me how it was. I was like, terrible. Like, I try to be super honest and rude, not rude. My wife tells me that I'm being mean, but you got to be honest with people and let them know what's going on, because a lot of people feel like they can podcast, They- which is true. Everybody can podcast, but there's just a lot of different things in place where you can't just start. I know I might be contradicting myself here a little bit. As I said, you gotta not listen to people suggestions, but at the same time, like, you have to have some expectations. And a lot of times with people who are just starting out podcasting, especially when it's 6 people, you start talking over each other. So before we started recording, I kept stopping them like, hey, make sure that you allow this person to speak, allow this person to finish their point. Do you know what a segue is? By the way, you only have like an hour time, so you can't just start talking and laughing. And also, I only have 2 mics here, so project your voice a little bit. And the way I tackled that, one of my friends, Leandra, she asked me, hey, yeah, I noticed there's 2 mics on the table, not 6. I'm like, yeah, because basically it's just 6 people. And right at that moment, at that time, I had only 2 microphones present. So what I ended up doing was just grabbing the audio from the mics and from the cameras, putting them together in Audacity, or syncing them up in Final Cut Pro, exporting the MP3 file, cleaning it up with Auphonic, going to Audacity, doing a little bit more work, and the audio was pretty decent. So it's like, once I understand, it's like a masonry or a carpenter. You see the project, you see the task at hand, and you say, I could fix that. We could undo this mistake. It's no problem. But next time, I'm going to bring this tool. Or next time, I'm going to get a clear, audible explanation of what to expect. Because I did do my due diligence and speak to the owner of the space and a co-space, and she did say that she think is like maybe like 2 or 3 people or one person. But she mentioned just one person. I just ran with it. I was like, yeah, it's just gonna be one person, even though she said it might be 2 or 3. But I didn't expect 6. I don't think she did either, and it's totally fine. But one thing that I do every single time, even the last time I did a podcast with a client from Atlanta, I not scold, but try to make them realize, hey, you need to do your due diligence. You need to learn how to speak. You need to learn how to enunciate your words. You need to learn how to focus on the podcast. When you have multiple people on there, you thoughts start flying everywhere, and you need to focus. So after the 6 woman podcast, the Avengers, right? After I did that podcast with them, I basically just let them know what was up. I said, hey, that was pretty bad, but Yeah, y'all could definitely do better. And she was saying that she needs to, here we're going back to the topic, she needs an intro. And I told her, what? She's like, yeah, we need to do an intro and an outro. I was like, she's like, do you do that? No. And it's not that I don't want any extra work, but it's that I do not want any extra headache. So she said, one of the girls say, no, we need an intro. Like, we need to record an intro. I was like, for what though? She's like, well, because we need an intro. Like, every podcast has to have an intro and outro. You don't need one. You just started. You don't even know how to conversate with your co-host correctly. You don't know how to do a multitude of things. And you need to focus on your craft at this moment. You need to focus on starting, topics, segueing. You need to focus on tonality and speech and having your points ready. That's what you need to focus on. And isn't your podcast about God? You creating this intro and outro will distract you from focusing on the message that you want God's people to have. So basically, you're being selfish and you're allowing yourself to get in the way of God's word to his people, theoretically speaking. I was just using her information, not against her, but to help her realize how foolish it is to focus on something so mundane as an intro. And that happened with another podcast that I did recently where the co-host, she's new to podcasting. And I told her, yeah, your podcast was trash, the first one. And the second one, but the last one was a little better. You got more comfortable. We did 3 podcasts in one day. And I told her, you can't expect, because you're dressing up nice, you got your hair, makeup, and you hired me with my fancy cameras and lights, that the podcast is going to be great. I just told her straight, it was horrible, but you have to keep going. And the reason why her podcast was pretty bad, she kept cutting off the guest. And one thing that you learn, and I went to school like years ago. They taught me this in middle school, in my elementary school as well, and high school. I went to some really unconventional public schools, but they had a lot of art and production programs. You never want to cut off the guest. The guest is the most important person there. And I try to tell a lot of my clients or people who record in their podcast, and they just don't understand that. So my most recent client, we did 3 podcasts in one day, and she's new to podcasting. This was her first podcast, and it was bad because she was masking her lack of skill with microphones, cameras, settings, and you can't. I mean, just because you have an amazing idea in your brain, in your cerebellum, you know, that doesn't mean that it's going to be good when you bring it out. You have to fortify it. You have to cultivate it and practice. And I think what ends up happening is a lot of people, like on the internet, everything looks super easy. When I got my whole setup set up the way that I wanted it to be, I had a lot of people tell me, "Oh, I can do that. I should do that. I should basically start a podcast studio in my home." I was like, "Well, there's a lot of skills," and I learned this terminology from Tom Buck. There's a lot of soft skills that comes into play in regards to how I've cultivated my own studio space. I have a little bit of understanding of how, setting up the camera angle, how further away it should be, understanding like cool engineering techniques, because at full time I'm a freaking mechanic who has to solve problems on a whim. So my brain has been able to be programmed to, I wonder if there's a quicker way to do that. That's how my brain works 100% of the time. So it ends up happening, clients will hire me to come to their homes, come to their office, and hey, can you create an unconventional thing for me in my space? No, I can't. I don't live here. And who was that guy? There's this guy. He's like a home decorator or home like engineering person, somebody like me, who gets paid thousands or millions of dollars to solve celebrities' problems with their workflow, with their living, and like he fills in the gaps for them, right? And I feel like I feel like for me to like do that for someone, I gotta live with these people. That's what this celebrity interior decorator, interior designer does. Like he lives in your home for a long, I forget his name. Gosh, I don't remember. But he lives with you. Like there's even musicians, people who help people write music. The guy with the beard, what's his name? He has like long beard, and he lives with Kanye or lives with whoever artist, or they live with him for like a month or a week or whatever, and he helps them come up with music. And he doesn't even play music. He's not even a musician, but he loves music, you know. So that's that. I don't know how we got into music, but I always try to tell people, I'll try to be honest with them, let them know, hey, oh my gosh, how was that podcast? They want you to tell them that they did good. If they did good, they did good. If they did bad, let them know they did bad and let them know why. And it's not hurtful. It's got to be honest. Like, I actually learned that from with my wife. Like, hey, that kind of sucked. Oh, really? You got to be polite, babe. No, yeah, that really sucked. I didn't like that. Okay. And that's how we've been able to cultivate our relationship is just on that. I didn't like that. That was lame or that wasn't funny. Okay. Well, now I know. Or hey, try better next time. Hey, the meal that you made, it was a little too watery, a little too salty. Let's try to fortify just honesty and integrity. And with my clients, I try to do that. But there's a lot of people who end up being a little too nice to them and they end up being lied to and all the other crap. But all right, y'all, hope y'all enjoyed this podcast. I guess the premise of this episode was be yourself, be your own person, upgrade equipment when you want to, when you feel like it, not when people are telling you to do. Don't use whatever people are telling you to use, right? I could honestly say there's been so many people who have told me I should upgrade to a Canon camera. Like I used to be a Nikon guy. I'm still a Nikon shooter, but I have 4 Sony cameras, right? Because I need the autofocus. I need their flexibility, their S-Log. It makes sense for me when I'm shooting for client stuff, but you can't necessarily explain that to somebody who's outside of your space. And that's another thing. You are inside of you. You know what's going on in there. You know what your plans and goals are. Even if you don't have any, you have a feeling and you know what's right and what's wrong for you. So follow that gut feeling. All right, y'all. Hope y'all enjoyed this podcast episode. If you did, please comment down below, like, share, subscribe. I'm going to be posting more unconventional things, like things that I want to post, and on my Patreon. So I've been having fun with that. It's actually free. You do not have to pay. There's a free membership version on Patreon that I'm going to be treating as a newsletter, but I'm just going to be posting whenever I want. It's going to be like my own social media. I'm going to be sharing a lot of behind the scene photos, tips, tricks, and whatnot. You do not have to pay. It's free. So this is an ad to sign up for my Patreon. Link will be in the description, or you can go to www.patreon.com/Gil Dormius. That's GUILDORMEUS. Thank you so much. Have a great day.